And I hope that intro music gets you as pumped as it does me every time I hear it. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, and welcome back. I'm exhausted, so
aren't we all?
Getting some intro music helps get some focus back in my life here. It's been a rough day, rough week. Last night was a tough game to watch for a lot of people, so we'll talk about that in today's episode. Got to talk about
me too, but I think it's because I was drunk on my way to a hangover.
Aww. We're going to preview all the Sunday and Monday games. If you're looking for Saturday, go back to Wednesday's episode. We talk about the two games on there. We didn't want to drop this late Friday and only give you guys about 6-7 hours to listen to this after you wake up Saturday to get a chance to listen to those game previews. So go back to Wednesday's episode. We'll talk about all the injuries, people who missed, recap Thursday night, and get you guys all set for Week 15, get you through the semifinals, get you to your championship, so we can get you guys a Beer Fueled Fantasy title. Hope you guys are excited for all that.
Yeah, we need those.
We're almost done.
We're almost done.
Three more episodes. One more week after this one, guys.
Yep, we're
Season 2 is almost done.
Season 2 ends in the spring, but
well, I mean,
technically it ends at the beginning of the draft, but the hard part of season 2 is almost
that's right. We're through the climax almost.
Yeah, we're into the slow roll here at the very end.
We're in the slow finish.
Well, I'm at Nick Sparts. Joining me here at the table is Dan Thury.
At 30 BFF, all the beers.
From our off-site studio is Christopher Hopper.
At BFF with you peas. Enjoying, whatever I'm doing tonight.
Hopefully you'll find a good one here. Thank you for tuning in with us. If you want to catch the live show, it is Beer Fueled Fantasy Football on YouTube. Hit that subscribe and bell button so you can jump in and ask us questions. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped, it is Beer Fueled FF. You can also DM Beer Fueled FF or email beerfueledfantasy@gmail.com if you want to help the show in additional ways. I know people have reached out to us about sending us beer. We have merchandise that you guys can pick up. Or lastly, we do have a Patreon available for helping to support the show directly. Appreciate all the guys who have done that already. It's been a big help. But before we go ahead and cover everything we got to cover in today's episode, let's let you know what's fueling us today. And we were not able to make a handoff, so this is a split decision episode.
Aww.
So, Hopper, why don't you kick us off with what you're drinking?
All right, so I have, it's called What the Fudgy. It is from Tuol, Denmark. It's from Denmark. It's just Tuol Copenhagen. I can't pronounce it, but it's a Denmark import.
Bless you.
I didn't realize that until right now. It is a Imperial Stout with sea salt, chocolate, and vanilla.
I'm kind of jealous. That sounds amazing.
That sounds really good.
It is pretty good, but full review later in the show.
All right, and we have Raspberry Coffee Stout from Schlafly on. I believe this is the second time we've had them on, both featured by Dan. 5.7% ABV, 30 IBUs. Name is pretty obvious in terms of what type of beer it is. And since they didn't have anything on their website, we just decided that this beer is inspired by the Lost Boys.
Just making it up as we go along.
So if you don't want us to do that, make sure you have information on your website about your beer. Otherwise, we're just going to put random shit in there as to what we think it's inspired by.
Which brewery is it from? I missed that, sorry.
Schlafly?
Schlafly?
Mm-hmm.
I might have to run that bottle works. And damn it, man, that's what you did is told me to pick up.
I probably could have.
All right. Before we get to everything else,
dick, though.
Got some news for you guys. News. I love Hopper like half a second behind.
I try to go early, but it's so to time it up, but it's so awkward.
Yeah.
All right. And in the sing-along and on to the news, where we've got Isaiah Crowell has been shut down for the year with his foot injury. He is done for the 2018 season, to injured reserve.
Elijah McGuire the rest of the way, as long as he's healthy.
Yep, and if he goes down, I guess we're on to Trenton Cannon and D'Angelo Henderson.
Hey! At least Trenton Cannon will get involved in the pass catching work right away.
Maybe D'Angelo Henderson finally gets the shot he deserves.
Yep, he got promoted off the practice squad today.
That bowling ball.
Keenan Allen did not return to the Chargers' Week 15 win over the Chiefs after going down in the first half with a hip injury. It has been diagnosed as a hip pointer. No structural damage. He is considered week to week.
Yeah, may miss some time, but not even that's a guarantee with it being long.
Yeah, they have the mini bye.
So it's a mini bye, so we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, I can see them shutting them down for the playoff and waiting for the playoff run. I don't see them missing the
They still have a shot at a first-round bye, though.
They do, but they won without him last night, so against a pretty good Chiefs team.
Yeah, if they had lost last night, I think they do. But the fact that they won means that they're in contention for the division and a first-round bye still. So I think if there's any chance he can go, he goes.
Yeah.
You know what's a great opportunity for a player to rest up from an injury? A first-round bye.
That's true.
That's 3 weeks if they went out. Woo!
Martavis Bryant knee, so he's also injured, was suspended from the league indefinitely for breaking his, I guess, probation protocol. I don't even know what this was. He got booted from losing his appeal.
We already spoke too many words about him.
All right. Jaguars waive tight end Niles Paul.
Yeah.
Got a couple players declaring as well. Darrell Henderson, running back Memphis, wasn't able to find an age on him, but he's been building up some hype this year. Apparently he's looked good, and some people are speculating he might be a riser.
Well, good. Can't wait to watch his film.
And then this guy's expected to be a second or third round pick is Devin Singletary out of Florida Atlantic, 21 years old.
Do you want to cover? I don't see him. Check back Sunday. Carson Wentz is doubtful. I think it's worth mentioning here, though, and I know that we're going to talk about him more later, but I do want to bring up Wentz because it's something I just saw on Twitter before I got here. And this is more dynasty relevant, but his performance had kind of been awful all season. He was diagnosed with a stress reaction in his back, by the way, which is a step before stress fracture, an injury he had in college. Every doctor I've seen on Twitter, including the fantasy doctor, has come out and said that that's a 3-month to heal completely injury, and the Eagles have admitted as much, but they may still try to play him. The thing with the stress reaction is he may have been playing with that for all or most of the season, and there's been a bunch of former Eagles players coming out saying that that training staff is suspect and has a history of forcing players onto the field when they're not in a place to play. So really, the reason I'm bringing that up on this show is from a dynasty perspective, just to say kind of don't worry about the down performance, because it's probably likely he's been dealing with this longer than this week, and it finally just caught up to him. But Emmanuel Acho, Kenjon Barner, and a couple other lesser-named guys have come out and talked about the Eagles training staff being suspect and forcing people out there when they probably shouldn't be.
The other thing of note, too, is a lot of it, I think, was not necessarily Wentz, but just some weird personnel decisions, some weird scheme decisions that they've had. The whole situation's just kind of been a mess for the Eagles this year.
The other thing to remember through that, though, is traveling for the team, and he might actually play, because if they have that track record of forcing people out there to play when they shouldn't play, it may not be a guarantee that he's done for the year.
I can see it being,
and I don't know if that's right or not.
Like, I can see like a Mariota thing that, with Tennessee, where they'll have full start, but they'll have one, back them up and do that whole fucking spiel.
Yep. And then Foles will get concussed, and then will come, and then broken back. Wentz will come into the game
and lead it to victory.
All right. Let's go ahead and cover what the hell happened on Thursday night.
What the hell happened?
And depending on who you are and who you started, you're going to have real different feelings on how this particular game went.
I was okay with it. Sad.
So
optimistic.
I was pretty all right. But the only person I had in this, I think, was, or in any place that mattered, I think, was Justin Jackson.
All right. Chargers win on a last-second 2-point conversion, win this game 29-28 to knock off the Chiefs in Kansas City. It's Mahomes' first loss at home in his career. On the Chargers side, Rivers overcame an ugly 2-pick first half to finish with a solid game. Threw for 313 yards, 2 touchdowns. And if it wasn't, the picks were bad. So if he hadn't thrown those, it could have been an even bigger day for him.
He kind of looked like watching that game, too, that he was just throwing things up and letting his receivers run under them and bailing out.
He was just chucking stuff.
Not necessarily look sharp.
No, this was not a great primetime performance out of Rivers. It just kind of worked out in a lot of ways.
It showed up when he needed to most, though.
Yeah, by missing Justin Jackson in the end zone.
Unforgettable first half, and then a nice comeback in the fourth quarter.
Yep. Speaking of Jackson, he did get the start with no Gordon or Eckler in this one. So if you started him, he ended up doing okay. 85 total yards and 19 touches. Got a goal line touchdown. I noticed some weird footwork issues with him, though, so I wasn't overly impressed with the tape, but I'm fine with it from a fantasy standpoint.
I think that one thing he did in college a lot was dance a decent amount.
Yes.
And I think they may be trying to work through some of that with him, which is probably what led to the awkwardness, because he did a lot of behind-the-line dancing in college instead of being a one-cut-and-go type of guy. And he did a lot of trying to juke people out in the secondary when he maybe should have lowered his shoulder. And I don't wonder if, them working with him on that is messing with his natural running style a little bit. That's something that'll dissipate as he gets more experience.
But yeah, there's multiple times where he'd hit the hole or get into the open, and then he looked like me stumbling back to my hotel room after an open bar wedding.
So he ran actually faster than his feet could move.
Yeah, his feet were not keeping up with his brain effectively.
That could also be a little bit of nerves. His first career start in the NFL, primetime game against a big division rival.
Yep, and then as I mentioned before, too, Rivers did miss him in the end zone. He had beaten his guy, and then Rivers underthrew it. That was a
fantastic wheel route too. That was a good play.
Yep. In terms of tape, I actually thought Newsome looked like the better player over his 8 touches. More efficient. I finished with 53 total yards. I was a little worried there for a bit that they might just give Newsome the load from there on out after he came in and looked really sharp.
Yeah, small sample size, but he looked like more of a one-cut downhill rather than what Jackson is.
And just more explosive and just able to make just chunk off big gains if you give him a little bit of a hole.
Running back. He's a 90s running back. He got the bulk of the carries in preseason. There's just a guy that he's not a sexy name or anything to know, but if something were to happen to people, he could actually carry a workload.
Mm-hmm. Mike Williams channeled his inner Derrick Henry, scored 3 times on Thursday night in a game when pretty much nobody started him. Caught 7 of 9 targets for 76 yards, had another 19 yards rushing, and just took this game over overall. But
I saw Dan Snow about how he feels about Mike Williams.
Yeah, I know. He ran into him. He ran into both Williams, didn't he?
Damian and Mike, because of all of Lane's injuries.
Yeah, and if anyone out there started all the Williams, congratulations on moving to the championship game. Because the 4 of them scored 80 points.
Are you sure that they're in the championship game? Probably not.
Congratulations on winning your consolation bracket.
There you go.
Yeah, Mike Williams, I think all he did in this game was show that if anything happens to Keenan Allen long term, he's probably a must start. That they'll lean on him, and he's up to the task.
Yeah, and he showed that my ball mentality that we liked in college, where outside of the last touchdown, but his first touchdown and a couple of jump ball plays downfield, it was just he went up and got the football.
He's always flash. He just needs targets.
He can go up and get it, though. He's got targets. He'll be fine.
Yep.
Tyrell Williams was the most targeted player with 12, caught 6 for 71 yards, gave you a solid flex day.
I'll take that.
The only other player who anyone probably started, because I don't think anyone started Travis Benjamin, would have been Gates. He caught 4 or 5 for 54 yards. For Allen, he obviously gave you the goose egg on the injury. He hurt himself trying to make a miraculous touchdown catch, and he almost pulled it off.
Damn it. I mean, yay. Good job, Allen.
Yeah, it was like he secured it a split second too late, and he just touched out of bounds before he could get feet down.
Damn.
Yep.
Yeah, so solid attempt. Hurt his hip on the play. Immediately came off the field. Came back out, tried to gut it out, and couldn't pull it off. I think it was one snap, and he was just like, I can't.
Yep. It was not a long return.
Yeah. For the defense, they just had so many missed opportunities in this one. They had multiple times where Mahomes was dead to rights and they couldn't make the play. They had an interception where 2 guys went for it and dropped it. So this defense could have had a actually okay day and just couldn't make it happen. But I don't think anyone was crazy enough to start up against the Chiefs unless they absolutely had to.
You didn't mention Hunter Henry though. How did he do?
Hunter Henry. I mean, considering Stephen A. Smith gave him a shout out, was completely invisible in this game.
That's incredible. What about Vincent Jackson? How did he do?
Vincent Jackson. I mean,
I didn't see him show up on the box score, but this is a guy that's been killing it all season long.
I mean, with Mike Williams taking his role, I guess they just didn't really need him tonight.
Man,
is Nene around anywhere?
All right,
man. Shout out Stephen A. Smith. I guess. By the way, Melvin Gordon on Twitter apologized for not showing up for your fantasy playoffs.
Hey, you might get him in Week 16 if you manage to survive without him.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Ravens.
And then they finish the fantasy playoffs hosting the Ravens next week.
It's a trap game. Not a terrible start for the defense.
On to the Chiefs, where Chiefs were kind of a weird week. Mahomes had his worst fantasy game of the year, just 243 yards and 2 touchdowns, and both touchdowns were in the first quarter. So this was looking like this was going to be a 4 or 5 touchdown game, and
it could have been.
It's freaking wild that the standard Cam Newton game this season is Mahomes' worst game of the season.
Well, he didn't have nearly as much rushing as Cam would normally get.
Well, you get it.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Standard QB day is his lowest day of the season.
It's a Baker Mayfield day.
He's close to setting the record for most points in a fantasy season. Period.
He would have had a bigger day if that whole Tyreek Hill thing that he got past the defense and it bounced off his helmet.
Yeah, he hit Tyreek in the helmet
because he couldn't track the ball well on that play.
I mean, it tracked right to his helmet.
I mean, and then Demarcus Robinson wouldn't have paid any more attention. He could have maybe got it off the bounce.
All right. Damian Williams, I think, is probably going to be the leading cause of upsets this week because he was slotted in a lot of leagues once Ware was declared out. Led the Chiefs in rushing and receiving, 123 total yards, 2 touchdowns on his way to a 27.3-point game.
Yeah, he killed it.
Yep.
I'm glad I played him in one league.
I had a league where I started Allen and Damian Williams, so Damian Williams may have single-handedly saved me.
Yeah.
Only other back to see any work was Darrell Williams. He had 4 touches, managed 32 yards, and did get a nice touchdown on a catch and run.
Good for him. Good.
Kelsey and Hill both far below expectations. Kelsey finished with 61 yards and 7 receptions. Hill gave you 46 on 4. The helmet did not catch the football in the end zone, unfortunately. Give him a bigger day.
Darn.
61 yards and 7 receptions is disappointing for a tight end when we talk about Travis Kelce.
Yes.
I think even Ertz, would be
That's
that's
his floor.
okay. Kelsey, that is, you want more.
We've seen some low Ertz days this year, too.
Targets were there for both, though. 9 for Kelsey, 7 for Hill. So I'm not going to read into it much heading to Week 16. No one else did much, though, including Robinson, who caught a touchdown but finished with 7 total yards.
Yeah.
Defense gave you 5 sacks and 2 picks on the day, and they've been much better down the stretch. Not a big fan of them on the road against the Seahawks next week, though.
No, that's not. That's gonna be tough. That place is gonna be fucking loud.
Yeah, it will be. And that's all I got.
Word up.
Let's hit ins and outs for this week. Starting with a couple players who were possible misses, but they're reported to be in. Up first is Ben Roethlisberger with his ribs.
I expected this.
He'll probably play.
Well, they've said he's going to play. He's off the injury report.
That's what I'm saying. He'll probably play.
Okay. And then Austin Hooper with his knee-ankle combo has been said he'll play.
I'm surprised because he hasn't practiced all week, hasn't he?
He got a limited session today.
Okay.
Doesn't have to practice to play.
I guess not.
And we'll get to one of those in a moment.
Yep.
For guys who have been confirmed out, Kerryon Johnson with the knee.
Oh.
That just makes it ugly because Zach Zinner and Alora Garrett Blunt is decent this week, but good luck picking which one it is who falls into the end zone.
Yep.
Rashad Penny's going to miss with the knee, so bump up Mike Davis a little bit.
And Chris Carson.
Yeah, definitely Chris Carson. He gets about 5 more touches a game when Penny's not healthy.
Ooh.
We got a bunch of wide receivers, starting with Odell Beckham's been ruled out with the quad injury.
This one hurts, but thank God it was ruled before Saturday's games.
Yeah,
that's big.
Yeah, it gets you 4 more teams to possibly squeeze in.
Yep.
Speaking of another guy who a lot of people have been relying on PPR leagues, Kiki Kuti is going to miss with a hamstring.
Again,
I'm not surprised.
He would have been in line for a decent day too had he been playing.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson's going to miss again with the hand in a tough matchup.
Don't care.
And not surprisingly, since it's a new injury, picked up Bruce Ellington with the hamstring.
And again, he's the other one who would have been in line for a pretty okay day had he not been hurt.
And then for tight end, Jordan Reed with the ankle-foot combo is out.
As expected.
Check back Sunday. We got Carson Wentz back, doubtful. It sounds like he'd be the backup to Foles if he goes.
Yeah, probably doesn't go.
Yeah.
Let's get to the running backs. We got a lot of big names. James Conner has not been ruled out yet with the ankle. He got a limited session in today.
I'm really hoping he plays. Doesn't have to practice to play, though. Just remember that.
I don't know.
Well, and he got a limited session in today, so he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he plays.
LaShawn McCoy, hamstring.
No.
No reason for him to.
And then Chris Ivory's shoulder as well is banged up. So Marcus Murphy time.
Oh, yeah. Let's go.
Matt Breida, again with the ankle.
Be interesting to see if he does or not. I think he has more upside than Wilson if he does play. But either way, the running back there is going to be running back 2. More on that later.
We'll play 10 snaps to get hurt.
Dan, start of the week, Ito Smith, knee.
God damn it. He's going to play.
I need him to play. He better play.
He's playing.
Chris Thompson, illness.
He should be okay. I don't know that an illness is going to keep many people out this early in the week.
All right. And then wide receiver, where we're going to do some real crystal ball reading here. T.Y. Hilton ankle has not been ruled out but did not practice this week.
I expect him to play. This is a very important matchup coming up. I expect him to get it out.
I think he plays.
Do you start him?
Depends on what we read early Sunday morning. That one you got to keep an eye on. Yeah, that one you got to keep an eye on.
Allen Robinson, hip.
I need him to play.
Yeah, I don't know for sure on him.
Doug Baldwin, hip.
Be good if he does play. I think he probably will, given that they held him till game time last week. But it is the Seahawks. They do keep things pretty close to their chest. He's got an okay matchup, but I think Lockett's a better play there anyway.
It's also the Niners. They may not need him this week.
Especially because we got Marquise Goodwin with the calf and Dante Pettis with the foot.
God
questionable.
Damn it. Come on, Pettis. Stay healthy.
All the Dante Pettis.
From what I've heard, Pettis is more likely to go than Goodwin.
I agree.
Yeah, Pettis has a ton more upside with Goodwin, and I like Pettis regardless, assuming he plays. Either one of these guys, though, if the other one misses, is going to be a hell yeah, throw him out there.
So speaking of Doug Baldwin, there's a note that just came out that he's likely to play this week.
Okay.
It just dropped, I think, 10 minutes ago.
Josh Doxson, concussion.
No.
Maybe.
And then Chad Williams, hamstring.
Don't care.
Don't care.
And then the only real big defensive player I saw was Xavier Howard. Knee is doubtful. That's big for anyone who's rolling Diggs out this week.
And good luck trusting Cousins.
And just a reminder for Randall Cobb owners out there, the Bears slot corner Bryce Callahan went on IR, so he is not playing either.
That is an interesting wrinkle. They may try to attack that.
They may.
All right. That's all we got for ins and outs. Let's go ahead and preview the rest of the Sunday and Monday night games. We only got 13 to do because we already got through 3 on Wednesday's episode.
Weekly preview.
And starting us off, we've got Dan with the Cardinals going and playing the Falcons in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Falcons are favored by 9. It's a 44-point over-under.
All right. David Johnson's my start of the week. I'm rolling him out there as my mid RB1 with his usual upside based on volume. Great matchup for him. Fitz is the only other player from the Cardinals I would be willing to throw out there. Volume should keep him as a wide receiver 3 with upside. Nobody else on this team is worth playing.
What about Trent Sherfield?
I mean, if you want to get cute.
He had 7 targets, 70 some odd yards in full PPR. I'm just saying.
Hey, in my league, I may have to get cute because I don't have Odell anymore.
I'm strongly considering Trent Sherfield.
My debate is down to probably Adam Humphries or Robert Foster. So.
Dude, Robert Foster all the way.
Yeah, especially if you need big play.
Go for broke.
You got to go for broke. Humphreys will maybe give you some floor. Anyways, with the Falcons, not a great matchup on paper, but Matt Ryan has played very well this season and should always be considered a mid QB1 with decent upside. As for the running backs here, Coleman and Smith. Smith is my start of the week. I just see him with higher upside with similar floor. Both are flex options with decent upside. If Smith for some reason can't go, then I absolutely love Coleman this week. And for receiver, Julio should be fine in play. As for Ridley and Sanu, they're both mere wide receiver 4s with okay upside. But I'm still not playing them as the targets tend to be split and they need a little bit of boom to actually show up. I put a note that Austin Hooper wasn't looking like he's going to play this week, but now that he is, you can throw him out there as that mid-tight end one with upside because it's what he gets almost more involved in this offense, at least on a consistent basis, than Ridley and Sanu.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he's the wide receiver too.
Yeah, he's their second target guy. And then as for the defense, it's a bad defense with upside, to it with this matchup, but we've seen what that can do even when the defense is bad. They can still give up a bunch of points. So it's a boom bust-ish week for them. That's it.
All right. Moving on next. Cowboys versus the Colts. Colts are favored by 3. Cowboys are going to be missing a bunch of pieces on their offensive line, so this should be an interesting matchup. 47-point over-under. Starting with the Cowboys, where Dak Prescott's been solid lately, and he's facing a Colts defense that's had one of the easiest slates in the NFL against opposing quarterbacks. Against quarterbacks that are at least decent, and the decent line is Dalton, Brady, Wentz, Watson, Carr, Tannehill, and Watson a second time. They average 22.13 fantasy points per game, 276 yards, 2.71 total touchdowns. I got Dak as a back-end QB1 this week because he has been awesome lately, even with the offensive line concerns.
Yeah, it's been good. This isn't nearly as good of a matchup for the Colts as I thought it was going to be 4 weeks ago.
Yep. Neutral matchup for run game against the Colts. So Zeke is just your normal top 5 play, but it doesn't push him into like number 1 consideration. It's just not a good enough, like it's not a plus enough matchup for him.
His work in the passing game always gives him top 3 upside.
Yep, but running backs are only averaging 139 total yards per game, and there's only 10 total touchdowns on the year against the Colts. So teams are throwing touchdowns more than they're rushing touchdowns against this team. They're scoring from further out.
Yeah.
On paper, Colts are amazing at opposing wide receivers, but if you look at the list of wide receivers they faced, only 3 are in the top 24 for scoring points per game. Hopkins twice, A.J. Green, and Will Fuller. Which over 13 games, it seems impossible that they've only faced 3 receivers who are in the top 24 over a 13-game stretch.
Well, they play in the AFC South. So
yeah, that helps.
That helps a little bit.
But average stat line for the 4 matchups is 87 yards, 1 touchdown, and 6 receptions for 8.75 targets. Since arriving in Dallas, Amari Cooper is averaging 8.83 targets per game. So I think he's probably going to give you about 87 yards, 1 touchdown, and 6 receptions. He's currently wide receiver 18 in points per game. I think he's a high wide receiver, 2 in a solid spot here. Gallup, Beasley, and the tight ends are all on the bench. It's a slightly better than average defense against wide receiver 2 and lower type players, so I'm not interested in trying to chase any of those with their low target volume. Luck is barely being sacked once a game. They scored 24 plus in 6 of their last 7. I don't think I'm starting the Cowboys defense on the road here. I think it's too risky. For the Colts, Cowboys defense has been solid, but not amazing against opposing quarterbacks. Their statement game was the one everyone saw on national TV against the Saints, where they kicked the crap out of Drew Brees in Week 13. But overall, they're only slightly above average, and now they face Luck, whose average game over his last 10 is 310 yards and 2.9 touchdowns. And that's including a 0 touchdown game against the Jaguars in there.
They're just not as good at home, they're not as good as a whole on the road. So
the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Agreed. Even with a slightly tough matchup, I think Luck is still a top 5 play because there's a lot of quarterbacks that have pretty tough matchups this week.
Yep.
Mac was one of my sits of the week, just 269 total yards and 2 touchdowns over the last 5. And he had the Dolphins in there. Now the Cowboys are top 5, 89 yards per game, 2 total touchdowns over their last 5. I got him as a low running back 3, and then Hines is in the definitely not category unless it's like 2-point PPR.
Yeah.
The only receiver I'm considering if he plays is T.Y. Hilton. And that's if he goes, and I am downgrading Luck if he's out. Slot receivers have been kind of the main weakness of the Dallas defense. 5 of the 9 10-plus point games are players who primarily run out of the slot. And that was Golden Tate, Kiki Kuti, Dede Westbrook, Trey Quinn, and Nelson Aguilar. Injury does scare me, though, so I think I have him more as a low wide receiver, too, but his ceiling is always like top 3 whenever he's out there. I'm not considering any of the other receivers unless he misses. If he does miss, I guess I'm looking at Chester Rogers as a desperation wide receiver 4.
It just depends who fills that slot role. I mean, like we've seen different receivers step up when Hilton was missing.
Is Dontrell Inman healthy?
Inman, I think, is going to go.
If Inman goes, he's the one I want.
Yeah, that's probably a good call.
He primarily plays out of the slot, and we saw when he was healthy that Luck will target him at wide receiver 2 levels, and he can perform with it.
All right. You know who I really want, though, if even whether Hilton goes or not?
Is it start with an E?
Yeah, Eric Ebron. Against the last 5 games for the Cowboys, they've allowed 441 yards and 4 touchdowns to tight ends. Ebron has a top 4 play at worst this week, and I could argue that he should be number 1. Like this is an awesome matchup for him. Dallas has been trash against tight ends that get a lot of targets.
Ebron and George Kittle have both really emerged as some super reliable options this year among the garbage heap of tight ends.
And they're both what, like 24 or 25 years old,
right?
Which is weird because Ebron's been around forever.
26.
No, I think he's 25.
He entered the league at 15.
That's right. I heard 13. It's weird.
Defense hasn't been amazing, though. Dak hasn't turned over the ball much, just 2 interceptions last 5 games. But Dallas does give up a metric fuck ton of sacks, 48 on the year.
Woo!
Missing multiple offensive linemen in this game, so the Colts are kind of a floor play. I don't expect them to get you more than 8 points because I think Dallas will score some, but they'll probably sack Dak 4 or 5 times. That's all I got. Let's move on to Dolphins versus the Vikings. Vikings are favored by 7. It's a 44.5 point over-under. Kicking this one over to Hopper. Anybody we're looking at on the Dolphin side to start?
There's a couple guys that are fringe here. So first off, Ryan Tannehill. The Vikings have only allowed 2 quarterbacks since week 6 to clear 17 points. Tannehill's a bit beat up, but he does have 3 straight multi-touchdown games with just 1 interception during that time frame. So he's a mid-tier streaming option if, say, you lost Carson Wentz, for example, and somebody played defense with Nick Foles. Even though it's a tough matchup against the Vikings defense, Tannehill has been performing. He gutted one out against the Patriots last week. At the running back position, Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore. As with most weeks, scores a deeper league flex play. He doesn't have a touchdown this season, but he is seeing double-digit touches. He's out-touching Drake, and he has just 1 week under 10 touches since week 3, and only 2 games all season under 50 yards when he gets up above that 10-touch mark. But absolutely no touchdown down upside for Frank Gore. Kenyon Drake, on the other hand, he's also a flex play. Minnesota hasn't given up a running back receiving touchdown over the last 5 weeks, and Drake hasn't seen more than 10 touches since week 8. But if somebody's going to score a touchdown, it is Kenyon Drake, so he's kind of a DP there. The wide receivers, Stills at all, I'm not really interested in any of them, and I don't trust the Vikings or the Dolphins defense or the tight ends. So really, the 2 running backs are kind of deep stream options, and Ryan Tannehill, if he lost, wins.
Yeah, the angle on Stills would have been if there was no Waynes, but the Vikings apparently had nobody on the injury report this week.
Right. As for the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, I think, is in line for a bounce-back week. The last 3 weeks, Miami's given up 29 or more points to opposing quarterbacks, 8 touchdowns in that time span. So I do not think he does you again. As for Dalvin Cook, only Aaron Jones has been over 10 points against the Dolphins in the last 5 weeks. They're allowing well under 100 rush yards per game in that span. Just 3 rush touchdowns. 2 of those were to Aaron Jones. No receiving touchdowns in that time frame. That being said, Cook could see an uptick in carries with the new offensive coordinator, and his efficiency hasn't been terrible. He has a receiving floor, so he's kind of a back-end running back Q formula this week. Dolphins have been much better against running backs, but I think he does see a volume uptick. As for the wide receivers, I fully expect Diggs and Thielen to both be startable in this one. Miami's given up double-digit points to more than one wide receiver multiple times this season. I think it's 5 times. They've allowed 1 or more touchdowns to position each of the last 5 weeks, and they're giving up 200-plus yards a game. So both of those guys are wide receiver 2 at worst, with 1 upside. And Kyle Rudolph is an upside start. 2 of the last 3 tight ends to play Miami have been over 15 points. 4 guys have done that over the last 7 weeks. They've also given up 4 touchdowns to the tight ends in 5 weeks. So, again, new offensive coordinator. You don't really know what you're going to see, how much that's going to change. But Rudolph does have an exploitable matchup, if anything. And then you're absolutely going to start the defense. You've got a beat-up Tannehill who is almost constantly under pressure. Vikings have a good pass rush, very good secondary. So I think that they're going to feast.
I agree.
All right. That all you got?
All I got.
All right. Up next is Raiders versus the Bengals. Bengals favored by 3 at home. It's a 46-point over-under. The line implies that there might be a few sneaky starts out of this game, though.
Yeah, you get the Raiders here. I'll start with Derek Carr. Carr has been more of 2016 Carr of recent year. He hasn't thrown a pick since week 5. He's had multi-touchdown games in 3 of his past 4 games. Gets a very nice matchup against a very beatable Bengals defense. He's Nick's start of the week. Carr has a decent chance of finding himself in a top 7 finish. So I absolutely like him this week over guys like Rodgers, and then obviously we just lost Wentz. As for the running backs here, Martin and Richard both find Vex value plus plays this week. Bengals are the worst running back defense in fantasy this season. Richard was Nick's start of the week as well, and Martin should see enough touches to be considered an RB2 with upside. No receiver has separated themselves since the Cooper trade, so I'm not rushing out there to play one. Cards tends to spread the ball around. Cook seems to be the only pass catcher worth trusting right now. Back-to-back weeks with 100-plus yards and has scored in 3 of his past 4 games. Defense is a bit boom-bust as well. The matchup is great, but the Raiders have been pretty bad defensively overall this year. As for the Bengals, Jeff Driscoll has shown very little to trust him as a streamable player. Mixon has a fantastic matchup this week and should be viewed as a locked-in RB1 with very good upside. The Raiders have given out 13 total touchdowns this season. The running backs and 159 total yards per game to the position. Boyd should be considered a high wide receiver 3 with upside in this matchup. Raiders have given up 19 touchdowns this season to wide receivers, tied for the second most. But you'll likely face Girian Conley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's a player profiler is 21st ranked corner. So he has done very, very well this season when he's locked in on a target. But target volume should still give Boyd decent floor. As for the other receivers, which is pretty much John Ross, very difficult to trust, but should be viewed as a boom bust wide receiver 4 or 5 given the plus matchup.
So I doubt he continues the streak, but a weird Ross stat is every game AJ Green hasn't played in, he has scored a touchdown.
Yeah. He gets like 2 catches for 12 yards
and a score. So if you need 7, he's going to give you 7.
CJ Uzama gets to face the worst tight end defense for fantasy, giving them an extra boost in upside. He hasn't had over 50 yards since 50 yards receiving since week 6, and has scored a touchdown since week 7. So it gives him a little bit smaller floor, but he has a high tight end 2 streaming upside to him. So not a terrible streaming option this week.
Like him in PPR leagues this week.
Yep. Yeah, he's getting some volume. A Bengals defense is just bad, and I'm not playing him regardless of the matchup.
All right.
That's it.
Moving on, Bucks versus the Ravens. Ravens are 7.5-point favorites at home, which feels a little heavy to me. It's 46.5.
Yeah, I don't
pretty
like
quiet in this one, by the way.
What'd you say?
So the questions have been pretty lacking in this one.
Yeah, it's a Friday night. Sometimes they're busy, sometimes they're not. 7.5-point over-under for the Ravens, 46.5-point over-under. Starting with the Buccaneers. Ravens have been a bit bipolar against opposing quarterbacks. They faced, I think, 8 quarterbacks I would generally consider pretty good. 4 games, they just kind of laid an egg, Dalton, Newton, Rodben, and Mahomes. But then they also had 4 games where they just completely shut down some good quarterbacks. Holmgren, Mariota, Breeze, and Ryan. Mariota might be a bit of a stretch, but I like to make the stat here. It's tough to say exactly what will happen with Winston. He's been hot lately, but he has 12 interceptions on the year. This feels like a situation where if you start him, it might work out for you, but man, are you leaning into the risk.
I don't like this matchup for him at all.
Yeah, I mean, I could just see things going just completely over heads over, where he throws 3 picks, he gets benched. Just things could go real wrong for him in a hurry.
Yep.
Only back to rush over for 100 yards for the season continues to just be James Conner. They've allowed just 871 rushing yards total on the season. So from Peyton Barber, because he doesn't get a lot of receiving work, you basically need a touchdown.
You're not playing him this week.
He has scored in 3 of his last 4 games, but he's still an RB4. Only receiver I'm rushing to start is Evans. Ravens have absolutely shut down ancillary receivers this season, but guys who get significant targets seem to do pretty well. There's only 3 instances of a player outside the top 24 even breaking 70 yards against them or scoring a touchdown. The majority of the damage, though, is done by good receivers. Evans is coming to the game as the 14th wide receiver in points per game. He's a wide receiver, too. There's some risk, but some upside. Godwin and Humphreys are both just desperation wide receiver 4s. Ravens have gotten roasted by tight ends this year. 4 touchdowns allowed in their last 5 games. Brate's a very nice play. He's a mid-tight end 1 this week. He had 2 touchdowns last week. I could see him matching that today and being the only touchdowns that the Buccaneers score in this matchup. And then defense has actually been playing better the last few games. But yeah, Ravens have scored 24+ in 4 straight, so I'm not considering him.
Look at Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, the offense is on schedule with him. That's the best thing you can say about it.
There's still turnovers they give up too, though. So
true.
A little bit boom busty.
All right. Continuing on to how the Buccaneers have picked up with the Ravens side here. Buccaneers defense has been much better lately. They've picked off opposing quarterbacks 7 times in their last 3 games when they had 1 pick period before that stretch. Allowed 0 games of 3+ touchdowns in their last 8, and that's including rushing. So there's 3+ total touchdowns. Jackson is going to be a safe floor rise because he's going to get you 70 rushing yards. I don't love the ceiling in this matchup, though, because the post-Mike Smith era Buccaneers have been much better at defending the pass. I got him as probably my quarterback 11 or 12. Buccaneers. Buccaneers run defense is hot garbage, though. 6th worst in the NFL, 20 total touchdowns allowed on the season, 4.61 yards per attempt. The only concern, though, is that you have Edwards, Dixon, and then a little bit of Ty Montgomery splitting this work. So it's tough to just say, hey, you're pushed into running back 1 because of how good the matchup is. So I've got Edwards and Dixon both as more upside running back 3s. And actually, just due to his touchdown upside, I actually prefer Dixon. For the wide receivers, Buccaneers have been above average against wide receivers their last 5 games, and Jackson does not do a good enough job of feeding the receivers. He's averaging just 150 yards passing per game and 2 touchdowns total to the position over the last 4. Brown, Crabtree, and Snead are all wide receiver 4s. If you have to play one, it's Snead. He gets the most consistent work.
Yeah.
Buccaneers have allowed a tight end to break 50 yards 9 times this season, so if there's an angle, as I talked about on Wednesday's episode of my start of the week, it's Mark Andrews. He's led the Ravens tight ends in yardage in 3 of their last 4 games. He seems to be a preferred target of Jackson. He is an option for if you're real desperate in a 2 tight end league. And then the defense is a solid play. Jameis gets sacked quite a bit. He turns the ball over a lot with fumbles and interceptions. The Ravens are probably going to put up some points this week on the defensive side of the ball. That's all I got.
We have a question.
We do have a question.
Jimmy, welcome back, sir. It's a very crucial decision for him this week. Jeff Wilson, Elijah McGuire, Doug Martin, full PPR. Let's say Breida sits.
Well, that was going to be my corollary anyway. So if Breida sits, it's Jeff Wilson.
They're all starters in their matchups.
It's not Elijah McGuire.
No. It's not.
If Breida sits, I would probably go Jeff Wilson. He's got the best floor. Breida plays, I'm going Doug Martin in that one. Cincinnati not good against the run. He's got touchdowns in 3 straight weeks. I think he would be very passable for you.
And I'm sorry that's the decision you have to make in the semifinals. Though I'm starting Doug Martin into place.
At least Doug Martin and Wilson both have good upside. I actually like Martin. I think the floor is roughly the same. We've seen Martin do it for the entire, well, not the entire year, but they're both very close.
The last few weeks, and I think he has a better shot at getting a touchdown. That's the one thing Jeff Wilson has not done over the 3 weeks that he's, or the 2 weeks he's gotten carries. Martin's got him 3 straight, but Wilson's yardage totals have superseded Martin almost by enough to make up for that.
Yeah, they're both very close. So you can coin flip them if you choose.
All right.
It Breida sits, of course.
Up next is Lions versus the Bills. Bills are favored by 2.5 at home, 39-point over-under, so not a lot of points expected in this one. Hopper, who are we starting out of this matchup?
Well, not Matthew Stafford. Bills have allowed just one guy over 20 points since week 5. One 300-yard passer all season. Stafford hasn't had a multi-touchdown game since week 10 or a 300-yard game since week 8. You're staying away from him.
Yeah. Did you see his ESPN projection was 12.5? And then in the love-hate, Matt Berry said he's taking the under.
I think he scores like 6.
Yeah,
I don't think he throws a touchdown this week.
He needs receiver help back. Because outside of Kenny Galladay, he does not have anything.
Yeah.
As for the running backs, Kerryon Johnson out. This backfield kind of anybody's guess. I will tell you that I am avoiding Theoretic, though. I don't think that there's going to be enough pass work to support him. And really, they're playing a team in the Bills that have allowed just 150 receiving yards over the last 5 weeks. As for Center and Blunt, they're kind of one and the same against a team that doesn't really get killed by the run either. They'll give up touchdowns, but it's really a dart throw as to which guy that's going to be. So if you're completely desperate at running back, given the recent glut of injuries, you can start either of them, but I'm really not willing to give any one of them a ringing endorsement either. As for the wide receivers, you can start Kenny Galladay, but it won't be a blow-up. He should be considered wide receiver 3 at best. The Bills have allowed just 2 100-yard receivers all season. Both of them were out of the slot, actually, which is why I made the comment about Ellington I did earlier, but he's not playing. Ceiling's probably about 75 and a touchdown with the floor closer to, 40 yards on 5 receptions.
Or maybe 10 again.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not playing him this week.
Yeah, I don't love him.
Oh.
And tight end defense. Tight ends, absolutely not. The defense in an emergency, but that's only because the Bills are pretty good at turning the ball over. As for the Bills, Josh Allen, you're probably going to sit him this week. The Lions have played Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and Mitch Trubisky. They have yet to allow a guy over 20 yards rushing, which is how Josh Allen's been getting his points. They will also allow just one rush down to the position. Passers do all right, but at this stage in Allen's career, he's really getting it done with his legs, and that's something the Lions don't give up a lot of.
I do think he'll get over 20 yards rushing, though. I think there's a 0% chance that doesn't happen.
I think he does too, but I don't think they're getting 100 this week.
Yeah.
Without LaShawn McCoy, the run game doesn't have a ton of value either. And even with him, it would be if his defense was torched by Gurley, but they held David Johnson under 10 points. They're generally not giving up a ton, just 65 yards a game on the ground over the last 5 weeks. So I don't love Murphy.
Yeah, imagine that. Snacks Harrison helps the run game.
Yeah, or whoever starts.
He's also hungry.
As for the wide receivers, Robert Foster was my start of the week. I absolutely love him in this one. He's a big guy at 6'2". He runs a 4.40. He's been over 90 yards in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Doesn't need a ton of targets to do that. And he fits the same profile as guys that are performing against the Lions, like Robert Woods, DJ Moore, Devontae Adams. So they've all given you wide receiver 2 or better days. I love Robert Foster this week. And you're going to avoid the tight end. The defense should have an okay floor because the Lions are in up, but they do not turn the ball over a ton either. So it's marginal at best for the defense. So really, to sum up, for the Lions, Galladay, Zinner, Blount, all kind of in that 3 to flex range. And for the Bills, really, Robert Foster is about the only thing I'm targeting.
So based on your write-up, I'm assuming you're pegging Slade as Shadow Zay Jones?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I do think Slade Shadows Zay Jones. I think he's still considered the one there, which opens Foster up.
All right. Dan, you're up with Packers against the Bears. Bears are 6-point favorites at home, and it's a 45-point over-under.
6? That's a little disrespectful. But before we get to that,
To
Jimmy,
the Packers or the Bears?
Disrespectful to the Bears.
Okay.
Yeah, they're at home. That should be, I think, at least 7. Anyways, before we get to that, Jimmy has to give us a little more narrative to his question. He also has Jordan Howard in this league, but he doesn't trust him. But does it change anything for you guys?
Well, let's get your review on Jordan Howard since we're at that game right now.
We are. Well, before we get
throw the stats out there, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah, before we get to the Bears, we got to start with the Packers. Adams and maybe Cobb are the only players that I'm considering playing in this game. Adams is always an auto start no matter what, and Cobb looks to have taken back the wide receiver 2 role in Green Bay.
And the Bears are missing Callahan, which is so that means Cobb's going to get Sherrick McManus, who is not nearly as good.
Yes. I still consider him a mid to low wide receiver 3, and he has decent to good upside this week.
That's because of the pass rush.
Yes, exactly. And Rodgers is a terrible matchup against a very, very good Bears defense. He's my sit of the week. I'm looking for another streaming option. I've hammered that home since Wednesday's episode. Jones is on the bench as well. Bears have given up just 7 total touchdowns to running backs this season. Second fewest in the league, and the fewest rushing touchdowns with just 3. Graham's on the bench as well. 5 tight end touchdowns. The Bears have allowed 5 tight end touchdowns, which isn't the worst in the league. They haven't given up any in their past 4 games, and also only averaging 34.5 yards per game. So nothing I really like from Green Bay. As for this Bears, Trubisky looked pretty bad in his return last week against the Rams, but the Packers should be his get-right game. Also, he has a chance to completely bury their playoff chances. So, a little bit of extra salt to pour in that wound. Packers have given up 8 touchdowns to just 1 interception over the past 4 games. So I view Trubisky as a low QB1 with upside this week. And then as for the running game, if the Bears can control the flow of this game, then I would like Howard in this matchup. He's still a low RB2 just for me because we've seen game script from him completely flip. And we've also seen, even in positive game script games, Colin seems to get the work. but he's been getting it done lately. So if you want to throw him out there as some upside to it, and he does fall into the end zone a fair amount, then throw him out there. Cohen seems to be matching them in snaps almost every week, it seems like. So I think Cohen has more upside to him. Green Bay has given up 10 rushing touchdowns on the season to running back, so there is that touchdown upside for Howard. Cohen should see around 12 to 15 touches in this game and possibly more if Green Bay can actually keep up with the scoring. So I think Cohen's more of a mid RB2 with his usual upside because of his big play potential and high pass catching floor. As for the receivers here, if Robinson can go, he's got decent upside. Green Bay has given up 19 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this year, including 160 yards per game to the wide receivers as a whole. Robinson has seen 17 targets in his past 2 games and 5 receptions in both. So he does have decent floor because he's shown that these past 2 games if he can go. Gabriel's been up and down this season, but the target volume should keep him as a high wide receiver 4, low 3 with some upside this week. And then 31 targets he's had 31 targets over his past 4 games. So that's where his floor comes from. Miller's fallen off the map a little bit too much, and I don't think he should be rostered in redraft leagues right now. As for the tight end, Trey Burton's been very difficult to trust this season, and with Shaheen back, his upside has completely tanked. He hasn't scored since week 9 and hasn't posted over 50 yards since his breakout game in week 7. I'm avoiding Burton this week if I can. Green Bay has given up the second fewest tight end points per game this season, including just 1 touchdown reception, and they've allowed only 43 yards per game to the position. And then as for the defense, you got to play them out there. They are completely lights out right now.
All right. On to Titans playing the...
Hold on. On to back to the question here.
Question, right.
So...
would you do Howard over Wilson or Martin?
Yeah. I'm looking at Jordan Howard the last 2 games, and I think that I probably would, because I think that he's... Yeah, I'm looking at what he did against the Packers earlier in the year, too, and I'm still thinking that I probably would, because I think that he's going to be close to Wilson's yardage total, but he's got Martin's touchdown upside also. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, he's averaged 4.7 and 5.3 yards to carry against the Giants and the Rams. Not great run defenses, but neither is Green Bay. He went for 82 yards against Green Bay in week 1, 76 last week, or 76 2 weeks ago, and 101 last week.
I think it's also tough to, just judge on week 1 because the Bears team was completely different then. Trubisky hasn't quite broken out yet, and Cohen wasn't being used. I still like Howard with his touchdown upside. I think Martin's got a little more protected game script to him, as he will get somewhat involved in the passing game, and I don't see that game against the Bengals.
I think
that, completely lopsided either.
I think that on average, though, Howard's getting more carries than Martin is.
That could be, yeah. That could be. I mean, they both have good matchups, so.
Since week 8, 22, 14, 11, 18, 7, that was a killer. 16 and 19.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's probably Howard Wilson Martin for me.
All right.
I still go Martin. God. Martin, Wilson, Howard.
My top choice is Wilson if Breida doesn't go.
Sorry, Jimmy. We're all different.
I think the thing you can take away from this is it's probably going to be about the same regardless of what throw out there. But if you want a touchdown, Doug Martin or Jordan Howard's probably your best bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wilson, I'm looking more for the PPR floor. Because he'll get 4 to 6 catches.
Yeah, your decision could get a lot easier. Or a lot. I don't even know if Breida doesn't play.
I guess you're kind of hoping that he doesn't to make this decision. Maybe a little bit easier for you.
I'm going Jordan Howard. I got a good feeling about him.
All right. Let's go on to the Titans versus the Giants. Giants are favored by 3, 43.5 point over-under. For the Titans, it's a 263 yards, 1.5 touchdowns, and 1.8 interceptions. It's been the average performance against the Giants over their last 6 games ever since they traded Eli Apple, which is less than ideal. Marietta's been straight up Katy Perry this year, being hot and cold for you. It's a tougher matchup than it would have looked like earlier in the season. And he doesn't have a rushing touchdown in his last 5 games. 0 games with 3+ passing touchdowns on the season. There's just too much downside to risk him in 1 QB formats in this matchup. It's not a good enough one.
Nope.
Before the last week blowout against Washington, the Giants had allowed either 100+ total yards or a touchdown to at least 1 running back in 6 straight games. So for everyone out there, which is most of you, who missed out on the Henry train in week 14, He actually has another solid matchup here and can be played as a low running back too with some upside in a plus matchup.
Don't do it.
Lewis, on the other hand, has 2 total touchdowns on the season, has broken 60 yards just twice since the Titans' bye week in Week 8. He's more of a running back 4 play and has just been wildly disappointing down the stretch.
Yeah.
So that's my main angle on Henry, is they seem to be turning more towards him.
So I guess his bitching actually worked for him.
Hey.
No way. It worked.
Giants have done a good job limiting opposing wide receivers since they traded Eli Apple. They're giving up 150 yards a game and just 4 touchdowns over their last 5. I don't love any of the wide receivers in this matchup. Davis and Taylor are both mid to low wide receiver 3s without a ton of upside. I see like Davis getting 60 yards and a touchdown being probably the best day we can see from him. Ferkser was Dan's tight end start of the week, and the Giants are exploitable.
Hopper started the week.
Sorry, Hopper started the week. Giants are exploitable against tight ends. He can be started as a low tight end 1 high streamer with some nice floor. He's hit 3 receptions in 4 straight games, and his average is 41 yards per game over that stretch, and this is his easiest matchup over that stretch. Defense isn't an ideal play this week. Giants offense has gotten rolling, scoring 20-plus in 5 straight. Eli's only has 3 total turnovers in their last 5 games. You're holding him for next week against the Redskins, though. Don't cut him. On to the Giants, where Eli has been okay lately, but there's no Odell. Titans are an above-average pass defense, allowed just 19 total touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks on the entire season. That's including rushing. You're not starting Eli in this matchup. Titans are also an above-average run defense, but Barkley's had 140-plus total yards in 4 straight games, so just know that this is going to be a tough one for you. He probably doesn't give you his normal 150-plus and a touchdown. You're probably more looking at like 100 and a touchdown, which, boo-hoo. You'll take it. With no Beckham, I don't want to start anybody in the pass-catching game here. Shepard hasn't broken 40 yards since Week 7, so even though this is a plus matchup, I have no faith in him. I'm treating him as a wide receiver 4. And then Ingram, this is the best tight end defense in football. They have not allowed a single tight end touchdown all season through 13 games. Look elsewhere for your tight end this week. Giants defense, though, is actually kind of an interesting spot. They've scored 10-plus in 3 of their last 4 games. And the Titans have allowed Mariota or Gabbert to be sacked 43 times on the season. So there's an interesting play there with the Giants defense that's overperformed a little bit. Don't love them, but not terrible.
Boom bust.
And then Dan, you're going to close us out here with far and away the lowest over-under of the week before we get to the beer review. Jaguars versus the Redskins. Jaguars are 7-point favorites on the road, and it's a 36-point over-under.
All right, should be very quick. Kessler should never be considered a streaming option. He is fucking garbage. Fournette is always considered a mid to low RB1, just given his volume and touchdown upside. Plus, the Redskins are bad against running back. They've given up the 5th most points per game to the position over their past 4 games. Westbrook was Nick's start of the week, and while I have a hard time wanting to trust any receiver in this receiving core, Westbrook has scored in 2 of his past 3 games and had 10 targets last week against the Titans. Plus, Washington is also hot garbage against receivers, so Moncrief and Westbrook are that high to mid wide receiver 4 with upside for me. Defense is an amazing play this week. Fire him up. As for Washington, I have one note. Is it fair to hate everybody here to the point where I don't want to play anybody in this matchup?
No, that's fair.
No, because I saw things I like for Josh Johnson.
Yeah. Okay, well.
Yeah, but that was an easier matchup in garbage time, though.
No. I meant what rushing quarterbacks have done against Jacksonville.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the 3 quarterbacks that typically the Jacksonville's played that typically rush have been at 70 or more yards.
The question is, you want to get that cute in the semifinals?
I'm getting that cute.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, you're in Scott Fish, right?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's different.
I need the upside more than the floor Aaron Rodgers is going to give me.
Yeah. Oh, God. Anyways, Peterson has just seen 19 carries over his past 2 games, and Chris Thompson has just 6 touches since his return, I think 2 games ago as well. So both of them are hard to trust from that standpoint. I guess if you want to get cute with the defense, but we've seen that defense tank since they've lost their entire offense. So if you want to get cute with Josh Johnson, I that's all you guys. There's no one from this offense I'm playing though.
Here's the stat, by the way, just in case anybody's trying to get cute, assuming they lost Wentz or Josh Allen, 13 carries, 99 yards, and a touchdown.
Dak Prescott 11 carries, 82 yards and a touchdown. Marcus Mariota 7 carries, 51 yards.
So they seem to lose contain on running quarterbacks.
On quarterbacks, especially if they get pressure, and that's what Johnson is. So just throwing that one out there. I know the interception rate's high, but if you're looking for a home run play and a desperation heave, that's why I said that I made the comment I did, that I saw something I liked with him.
So he's got some super flex upside to him.
All right, real quick before we hit the beer review, Nick Foles over Driscoll.
From Jimmy.
He's asking, yep, and I agree.
100% yes.
Yes. It's ugly, but yes.
Beer review.
All right, and Hopper, what did you think of your Danish beer?
For lack of a better word, pardon my Dutch, I guess. This is fucking good. I had to take another drink of it just to be sure. It's really good. For 11%, you do get a little bit of the alcohol taste on it. But the sea salt does a great job masking that. And I'm not sure how much of that is alcohol bitterness or the chocolate and the vanilla playing into that. Because if you've ever tasted vanilla extract, you know that's naturally bitter, not sweet. But you get but there is a sweetness that it leaves on your lips and on the back of your mouth from the vanilla. The chocolate in this is very, very prominent. It's almost like drinking an alcoholic hot chocolate that's not hot. It's a very, very good imperial stout. I am very, very impressed. And overall, I think it's more flavorful than any comparable American imperial that I've had.
Very good.
Delicious.
All right, Dan, what did you think of the raspberry coffee stout from Schlafly?
Well, if you like raspberry, you'll like this beer. As opposed to the coffee portion of this, it doesn't really show up till the back end. More on the after flavor. I don't say it's not very heavy raspberry flavoring, but the raspberry sticks out the most through first sip and then kind of through the whole subtleness of it.
Yeah, it's real heavy on the raspberry. The flavors are in the order described. It goes from raspberry into coffee stout.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not thick as what a stout would like traditionally be. It's just refreshing.
It's a lighter stout.
It's a lighter stout. It drinks more like a porter, almost.
Yeah, no alcohol flavor whatsoever.
It shouldn't be.
But yeah, it's lighter. It's a very easy drink. If you love raspberry, you're gonna love this. If you're more neutral or hate raspberry, probably not, just because the raspberry flavor is so intense.
Oh, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's there. I've had beers with far more raspberry intense flavors, which would make sense because I'm sure they're not stouts, but it's a solid raspberry beer.
It for me, probably the closest comparable I can give you is chocolate with like a raspberry toffee filling or something like that.
It's like a chocolate covered raspberry.
Yeah, that would be pretty close too. But yeah, you just get a ton of raspberry flavor up front. You just get a little bit of coffee stout on the back end.
Yeah.
Real raspberry forward. So shout out Schlafly. Second time we've had you guys on. And we'll go ahead and proceed on to our afternoon games here, where Hopper's starting us off with Seahawks versus the 49ers. Seahawks are favored by 4 on the road, 43.5 point over under. Do you trust Russell Wilson to have a bounce back game here?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of things I like in this game, actually. Russell Wilson, I think you have to start in this one. He had 4 touchdowns his last time out against this defense. Case Keenum, the combination of Derek Carr, Adrian McCarron, and Josh Rosen are the only quarterbacks that haven't thrown multiple touchdowns against San Francisco. And we know how efficient Wilson is with his touchdowns.
Yes.
As for the running back, Chris Carson should be okay in this one. He's a Seahawks lead running back, has solid touchdown upside. He's getting 15 to 20 carries on average, even with Penny healthy. It's closer to the 20 mark when Penny's out, and Penny is out this week. He's been held under 50 yards just twice all season, both of which were games where he was below 10 carries. I do not think that happens in this one at all. That being said, though, this matchup isn't as good as some people might want you to believe other places. San Francisco's at 4 yards per carry allowed over the last 5 games, and they've been pretty above average. They've allowed just 3 rush touchdowns since week 7 versus 7 in the first half of the season. So your upside for Carson's going to be tempered. God damn it, Dan.
Yes. Not just me.
But he's a solid running back to you this week, just based on volume alone. As for the wide receiver, Baldwin, if he goes, is fine. But Tyler Lockett's the guy I'm really interested in here. They should both be started, though. There's been 9 pairs of wide receivers that have had double-digit performances, and speed guys like Lockett do exceptionally well, while slot guys seem to perform very solidly with a decent floor. So if Doug Baldwin plays, absolutely, but Tyler Lockett's the guy I'm really interested in here. Then Nick Vannett, you can pretty much be done with him. 2 or fewer targets the last 5 weeks, so just a no-go on him.
Wilson just doesn't throw the ball enough, and he's throwing it to wide receivers over tight ends, so there's just nothing there.
Just a very deep threat game for him, so I don't see a lot of Vannett in this one.
Nope.
Out of the 49ers, for Nick Mullins, who just went for 414 yards and 2 touchdowns against this defense a couple weeks ago. Cousins is the only quarterback since week 9 under 20 points. He's a back-end quarterback 1 for me this week. As for the Jeffrey Wilson, Matt Breida discussion that we've had a couple times already this show, gassy. Whoever starts should be a solid running back 2 this week. Wilson put up 13 points against this team just 2 weeks ago. He's absolutely going to see work, but I think Breida, if he plays, has a higher upside, and he may creep into running back 1 territory. Seattle's given up 1,088 yards on the season, and 400 of those have been in the last 5 weeks, which isn't necessarily a good rate. So they've gotten worse as the season's gone on. I just like Breida's upside if he plays more than I like Wilson's. Obviously a better running back.
Mm-hmm.
As for Seattle, we've mentioned it before. I said it before Dante Pettis went off last time. Speed kills this defense. So whichever one plays between Goodwin and Pettis is an absolute must start, especially if the other one doesn't go. Otherwise, I'm leaning Dante Pettis if they both play because he's seen 7 targets in each of the last 3 games, scored 4 touchdowns over that stretch, and does seem to have the better rapport with Mullins than what Marquise Goodwin does. If Pettis doesn't play and Goodwin does, then you flip that to Marquise Goodwin. But the only way I'm not starting Dante Pettis is if Pettis doesn't play. Otherwise, I think he's the better of the 2 options, and if Goodwin doesn't play, he's got massive upside. And then George Kittle's always a starter.
All right. Up next, Patriots playing the Steelers. Patriots are 2-point favorites in this one. It's a 52-point over-under.
Disrespect.
I agree. Actually, when I deep dove this, I think the Steelers should be favored at home in this one. Starting with the Patriots, 228 yards, 1.4 touchdowns per game has actually been the average given up by the Steelers over the last 9, and 0 quarterbacks have broken 20 fantasy points against them during that stretch. Rivers hit 20 on the nose, and everyone else has been below that number. Brady also only has 7 touchdowns in his last 6 games, and that's including a 3-touchdown game just against the Dolphins last week. So I don't think this is as big a game as some people are projecting him as. I've seen a few people have him in their top 5 this week. For me, he's more of a low QB1.
With Brady, there's just always that chance. That's why I think people rank him that high, because it's also against Pittsburgh. I mean, I'm not trusting it.
Yeah, it's a road game in Pittsburgh against a team that's been playing very well on defense. Steelers have allowed some of the lowest yards per game to the running back position at just 106 total per game, only 13 total touchdowns on the season. So if possible, I'm actually avoiding both Michelle and White this week. It's a tough matchup, limited upside to both. I consider both low running back 2, high running back 3s. And if I can find somebody else that I like more, I'm looking elsewhere. If I'm picking one, I am picking White, because I do think there's going to be scoring and targets to go around.
Yeah, he'll get some pass catching work.
For the receivers, Edelman and Gordon are both solid plays. Steelers are a little banged up in the secondary. They allow 165 yards per game to the position. And the majority of the wide receiver production goes to Edelman and Gordon. So they're safe plays. I've got Edelman as a mid-wide receiver 2. Gordon is a low-wide receiver 2 in this matchup. And to the big play this week, where Gronk finally appears to be back. He's had solid performances in 2 of his last 3. Got touchdowns in both those games. And the Steelers are garbage against opposing tight ends, allowing the 7th most yards per game at 65 per, 3rd most touchdowns to the position at 7 on the season. So this is a solid matchup for Gronk. And just with how much he's kind of screwed us this year, he's only top 5 for me, but he has the potential to blow up and give you a full-on old-school Gronk week this week.
He's heating up.
For the Patriots defense, they don't cause enough turnovers. They don't get that many sacks, and they allow too many points. So not starting the Patriots defense in a tough road matchup. Onto the Steelers, where Ben's worst game since Week 7 bye was a 257-yard, 2-touchdown, and 1-pick performance back in Week 8 against the Browns at home. Since then, he's had better games than that, even against the Ravens, Jaguars, and the Broncos on the road. Now he gets a defense that just let Ryan Tannehill go for 3 touchdowns, and he gets to play at home. Give me a top 5 ranking to Ben this week.
Fuck yes.
Connor's good to go. You're obviously going to start him. I'm not going to analyze that too much further, though, because I don't expect him to play, which means we're looking at Jalen Samuels. Patriots are allowing 55 yards a game to opposing running backs receiving, which is the main place where Samuels gets his work. He's a much better pass catcher than he is runner, and they've allowed 4 receiving touchdowns on the year, 2 pass-catching backs. So in PPR format, Samuels is a low running back 2 if Connor misses. He gives you a solid floor, so he is a safe option if you're looking for somebody there. Even in the revenge game, though, I'm benching Ridley. He doesn't get enough work even with Connor out. Obvious wide receiver ones, Brown and Juju. Don't have to spend too much time on this. Patriots defense has been going kind of towards mediocre as the season's gone on pass-wise. Allowed 474 yards and 4 touchdowns to wide receivers over their last 3 games. And now they get shredded. They're going to get shredded by a top wide receiver duo here. They are solid against tight ends, though, so I'm not starting either the road dog Jesse James or Vance McDonald in this matchup. Only 175 total yards and 1 touchdown over their last 4 games for the Patriots allowed to tight ends. So the duo is on the bench. And then Brady just doesn't take enough sacks, doesn't turn the ball over enough to start any defenses against him. So you're benching the Steelers as well. We're on to Dan, where we've got Eagles versus the Rams on Sunday night. This looked like such a good matchup when we scheduled it at the start of the season. Rams are favored by 11, and it's a 52.5 point over-under.
All right, we'll start with the Eagles here. Nick Foles was Hopper's start of the week. I don't quite share the same faith in Foles as he does. The Eagles' offense does look out of sorts, so maybe the QB change could actually spark something, so there is something there, but it's still...
and also the idea that Wentz may have been playing injured for at least half the season.
Yeah, there's a lot to potentially like here. It's just too much for me to want to trust them in my semifinals matchup. Mid-season, maybe, just not now. And the Rams just held Trubisky to 110 passing yards in a very, very forgettable game for him. And then for the running game, if I felt confident that Josh Adams could see 15-plus touches in this game, then I would consider him an RB2. I don't. The game script could keep the Eagles passing more, which means more Darren Sproles. Plus, Adams hasn't seen a target in his past 2 games. The loss of Wentz could mean Adams sees more work. So, yes, there's a chance that he could have his usual upside. But even then, that means the offense becomes more one-dimensional, and I still don't like it. I'm not a fan of either back here. Sproles doesn't see enough touches, and I think Smallwood had 1 this past week. As for the receiving game here, touchdown upside is in favor for the Eagles receivers. The Rams have given up 18 wide receiver touchdowns on the season. But like the running backs and Josh Adams, I just don't trust any receiver here. Jeffrey finally showed up this past week. The last game was the first time he had over 5 catches since week 7. It was the last time he had over 50 yards and a touchdown since that same time. Tate's had a nice streak of games with 7 or more targets since joining Philly, but not since coming off a 3-target game. But now he's coming off of a 3-target game and another QB change for him. Not a lot of faith in that. And then Aguilar is pretty much boom bust with very little boom to his game. Ertz is, of course, always an auto start even with Foles in. In the 2 games he played with Foles at the beginning of the season, he had 23 targets, 16 catches on those for 142 yards. And then, of course, you're not playing their defense against this Rams offense. As for the Rams, Goff gets a nice bounce-back game for them. The Eagles, who are giving up the 9th most points to quarterbacks this season on a per-game basis. They've allowed 20 touchdowns and nearly 300 passing yards per game on the year. Love Goff this week. Gurley is always an auto start regardless, even though he's been a little bit slow lately. Cooks and Woods are always considered wide receiver 2 with upside. Woods especially, as Goff has leaned on him more since Kupp was placed on IR. Woods has seen 8 or more targets in every game since Kupp was placed on IR. 2 of those games, he was seen 11-plus targets. He's had touchdown in 2 of those 3 games with 60-plus receiving yards in all 3. Cook hasn't quite seen the target volume that Woods has, but he's still putting up a lot of big plays. Plus, Philly's garbage against receivers. 15 touchdowns given up on the season. The second most wide receiver points given up per game on the year. With that in mind, Reynolds is also considered a wide receiver 4 with some upside, just given the matchup. Never trust a tight end here. In the defense, it's a bit of boom bust here. We don't quite know which Nick Foles is going to show up. But they've only given up 31 points over their last 2 games with 6 turnovers and 5 sacks. So I do like the Rams defense this week.
I do as well.
That's it.
All right, Hopper, you're taking us home in semifinals week with Monday night. Saints versus the Panthers. Saints favored by 6, 52-point over-under in Carolina. Who are we not starting on the Saints side in this matchup?
Well, Drew Brees, I think you are going to start, actually. He struggled the last few weeks. Carolina did look okay against Baker Mayfield, but it's Drew Brees. I wouldn't expect a blow-up. He did show up when he needed to. Carolina's got a relatively weak secondary, so he's not going to be a blow-up game, but he'll be in the quarterback one range.
He's at home, so that helps.
No, it's in Carolina.
It's in Carolina.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I'm just kidding.
Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara where this gets more interesting. Mark Ingram's a back-end running back 2 play this week. Chubb Barber and the combination of Rashard Penny and Chris Carson, who are all bigger backs, have only managed 180 total yards over the last 3 weeks, 60 yards a week. But there are touchdowns to be had in this one from that type of back. So I like Ingram a bit more than Kamara, who's kind of fallen off a cliff, honestly. He's a running back high end 3, low end 2 to me in this. Yeah, and that seems insane, but he hasn't been over 100 scrimmage yards or scored in the last 3 weeks. Carolina hasn't allowed a running back over 30 yards receiving since Barkley back in week 5, and they have given up just one running back receiving touchdown since week 10. So Ingram is situating to be the better matchup against a strong Carolina rush defense with a good linebacking core. And where Kamara excels is where Carolina is good. So I don't necessarily love him this week. There's no way you're benching him, obviously, if you own him, but I don't think it's going to be very good. As for the receiving game, Michael Thomas is a top-tier wide receiver 1. Carolina's allowed 8 wide receiver touchdowns the last 5 weeks. They have also allowed 4 100-yard receivers over the last 4 weeks. And have held just 3 teams that double-digit fantasy wide receiver all season. Thomas is getting all the targets. He's a lock for a 100-yard game, probably a lock for a touchdown, definitely a lock to be a wide receiver 1. The unfortunate side effect of that is that nobody else on the Saints is necessarily guaranteed targets. It's all been kind of spread out. So if there was a clearly defined wide receiver 2 here, I would like them. But there's not. So I really can't recommend that you go out and start a wide receiver 2, but that you go out and start a tight end because it's been alternating weeks of Josh Hill and Dan Arnold.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Ted Ginn is not quite back. I think he's back next week.
Yeah. So I don't know that you can really start anything else other than Michael Thomas here. Obviously, Ingram, Kamara, and then Drew Brees. And as far as the defense, against the Carolina offense, it's kind of in a tailspin and injured Cam Newton that's looked bad the last couple of weeks. You could do worse than this one. The defense has been playing better. So, well, I don't love them to be top 5 or anything. I think that they're definitely top 12.
I agree.
As for the Panthers, Cam Newton has been downright bad the last 2 weeks, and the Saint defense has improved as the season's gone on. They've allowed just 2 multi-touchdown performances over the last 4 weeks, just 1 300-yard passer. Cam's a back-end 1, but I don't think he blows up in this one either. It's kind of a meh week for him. Against the Saints defense, it's really stepped up in his recent bad performances. On the flip side, Christian McCaffrey is a must-start no matter the matchup. He's been absolutely fantastic. I don't remember the last time he didn't have 100 scrimmage yards. He's been scoring. There's no way you're not starting him. At the receiver positions, DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel have completely passed Funchess at this point. However, both should be considered no more than upside flex plays. Just Calvin Ridley has cleared 10 points in the last 5 weeks against the New Orleans defense. They faced Tampa Bay, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Cincinnati. Even though some of those teams are one-dimensional, Tampa Bay is the big one where their offense has been really good with multiple options, and they got shut down. Amari Cooper didn't do anything. Alshon Jeffrey and Golden Tate didn't do anything. Tyler Boyd didn't do anything.
Yeah, I do like the wide receiver 2 and 3 options against the Saints secondary because PJ Williams and Eli Apple is pretty garbage. It's just who's going to see Marshawn Lattimore more.
DJ Moore will probably see Lattimore more, I think.
Yeah,
Unless
and that's
they
if
move
Funchess.
unless they move him in the slot.
But it's not like second and third wide receivers have been performing that well either. Like I said, only Calvin Ridley.
Well, yeah, but
He's giving you a startable fantasy today.
I'm just looking at Godwin's 10 targets last week. You know, he didn't do anything with them, but there's upside there. So I do agree with you.
He caught one.
Well, I know. That's why I said there's upside.
It was Winston's fault. He was missing him.
Yeah.
It was. As for the tight end, Ian Thomas has had back-to-back good games since Olsen went out. New Orleans is just average against a tight end. That being said, Higbee and Everett are the only guys to clear 40 yards since R.J. Howard did it week 1. New Orleans has allowed just 3 touchdowns to position all season long. He's a high-end stream based on volume because he is getting targeted, but I also don't expect that to be a blow-up. So really, it's CMC and a bunch of guys with upside that I'm not necessarily 100% confident they're going to perform.
Yep.
That's all you got?
That is all I got. I wouldn't necessarily start the Panthers defense just because Breeze has, depending on which Drew Brees you get, it could be okay for them, or it could very much be them getting shredded at best.
All right. Well, that wraps up our Week 15 preview. If you missed Wednesday's episode and you needed to get this information on the Saturday games, go back and check that out. We previewed both Saturday matchups for you there as well, which was Browns, Broncos, and Texans, Jets. Not starting a lot of people out of the Jets game.
Nope.
All right. So hopefully. Oh, go ahead, Upper.
Herndon.
Yeah, Herndon.
That's about it.
That's about it.
All right, guys. Hopefully that's all the information you guys need to get a win this week. We'll be back with you on Sunday morning. At least Hopper and I will, to answer all your questions, all your asking for a friends. Make sure you guys are all ready before kickoff. Going into Week 15, help you pull out a win. And then we'll be back Monday, Wednesday, and I think we're going to go Saturday next week to get you guys set for your fantasy championships. You look like you're thinking about something now.
Yeah, well, I won't be, but yes. Oh, no, Saturday morning. That's right.
Yeah.
If I would say Saturday morning, not Saturday.
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. I didn't want to. Yeah, whatever. I forgot what time we were going. But yeah, we'll see you guys for those episodes. Be sure to check out this YouTube show. It is Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. Hit the subscribe and the bell button so you get the notification when we're live Sunday morning. It's about 10:30 in the morning Central Time, about an hour and a half before the noon kickoffs. If you want to follow the show, it is Beer Fueled FF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped. If you want to get when our shows drop, go ahead and get us information about our can art. And lastly, our beer reviews, thanks to Hopper. From St. Louis, we have Christopher Hopper.
BFF with 2 B's.
To my right is Dan Thury.
And 3 BFF with 2 F's.
He is petting Murray the cat, and I am at Nick Sparts. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time on Beer Fueled Fantasy Football.
See ya.
Peace.